Hello and welcome to this School of Humankind free event. My name is Wyndham. I am the Blueprint Coach, and I am one of a myriad of heart-led faculty members with the School of Humankind who have all come together in order to share wisdom, share perspective, in order to help people live what we are calling an FGL. Now, the G and the L are glorious life. The F is entirely up to you. But we all fundamentally believe that everybody deserves to live their version of a glorious life. And if we can help in any way, through sharing of perspective, through courses, through workshops, whatever it might be, that is what we want to do. So today, I want to help you shift your perspective around our relationship with our mind. Today's talk, I guess, or perspective share is called Wrangling Your Monkey Mind. And I know from decades of my own life, I spent almost all of my life above my chin. Every conscious moment was in my head. So I want to talk about this and actually about how I freed myself from that. Today, 15th of May, it's an auspicious day for me because my book, Find Your Freedom, It's Time to Write Your Own Blueprint, came out today. So if anybody wants to go and buy that, please do. Be greatly appreciated. But actually, I'm going to refer to things today that are explained in much more detail within that book. So it is an opportunity to expand your understanding if this talk today resonates. And on that note, I start all of these talks essentially asking for you to bridge to 10%. I am loath to tell anybody what to do. I hate other people telling me what to do. And I actually hate myself telling me what to do. It's a bit of a tricky one, and you end up having these mental gymnastics to figure your way through it. But for me, there's a very famous Einstein quote that says, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that creates them. Now, I held on to my old thinking for a very long time, and it was only when I started practicing bridging to 10% of other people's ideas, other perspectives, that I was able to weave my own patchwork of things that work for me. So some of this stuff, some of you will find deep resistance to. That's okay. I'm not trying to persuade you one way or the other. What I am offering is a different perspective, a different framing that hopefully will help if you have, or you perceive that you have a problem of being caught up in your head too much. But before we get into all of that, I would like us to arrive in this space and ground a little bit. So I invite you to close your eyes. If you're not comfortable doing that, then bringing them to a soft focus will work just as well. And I invite you just to become aware of your breath, not manipulating it, not changing it, just aware as you breathe in and out. And then as you breathe in and out, slowly start to deepen your breath, gradually extending your inhales and extending your exhales. And now bring your awareness to those parts of your body that are being supported by the chair. Maybe the soles of your feet are on the floor, your back against the support of the chair. And spend a moment at each contact point, bringing your awareness to your body. Now, gently opening your eyes if they are closed. Coming back into the room. And instead of your attention being on your body, bring it to me. I'm only joking. So, wrangling your monkey mind. This was a huge problem for me for a very long time. And one of the things I want people to take away from this is that there's no silver bullet. This is not a werewolf we're hunting. This is something that takes time, practice, a willingness to see things in a different way. And one of the different ways I want us all to start thinking about is three things that I think we are separated from at a very early age. Self-advocacy, so standing up for what we really want. Self-agency, really tapping into our power to create what it is that we really want. And third, and maybe most important, discernment. We are bombarded by people telling us what to do all of the time and have been since we were born. Practicing the skill of discernment is what ultimately is going to enable you to connect to who you really are, understand what you really want to create, and tap into the power to create it. So for all of today, I want you to mentally challenge everything. Don't just take my word for it. We're going to do a couple of exercises during this session. See how they land with you. Because one of the big lessons I learned was my lived experience is more important than somebody else's perspective. If I just adopt, if I defer to somebody else, I end up going somewhere I don't want to be. So, self-advocacy, self-agency, discernment. Because one of the problems we face is from a very early age, we are taught supremacy of the mind. In fact, it's almost like we're not taught it. It is just, we end up slipping into this default. We happen to be incredibly intelligent, mentally agile creatures. And that primacy of mind, we're in this age where I love science, I love deep research, I love deep understanding of how things work. And yet, if we trap ourselves in the demonstrate hard evidence for every single thing, then we are still deferring. I spent so many years saying, prove it to me or I don't believe it. Did I go and read the papers? No. Did I actually do any of my own research about what I was being told was understood? No. So an element of discernment and challenge is really important, especially when it comes to this idea that our mind is the single most important thing about us. What about our bodies? I spent all that time chin and above. What about my body? There's books written about it. The body keeps the score. What about our heart? What about our soul? Now, heart and soul may be tiptoeing dangerously close to woo-woo territory for some people, and I get that. It was that way for me for a very, very, very long time. The question to ask ourselves is how I currently think working out for me? And if it isn't working out very well, the only alternative is to shift how we see things. So the perspectives I'm going to give you today that you can reflect on, that you can challenge, that you can work with within your life are: number one, you are not your thoughts. Full stop. Absolutely not. Nobody is their thoughts, as powerful and compelling as they can feel. And number two, attempting to create an empty space in our mind where our thoughts used to be is guaranteed to fail. So our intention, if that is what we're trying to do, I practiced yoga for a long time. I trained as a yoga teacher. In meditation, I would hear so many yoga teachers saying, clear your mind. I think it's an absolute guarantee we're going to fail. And when we fail, we judge ourselves for it. And I'm going to explain to you why I think that. So we have this idea that we are our mind. But we've got the body, we've got the heart, we've got the soul. Why don't we identify with our heart? Why don't we think we are that? And let's look at the heart and then draw a correlation across to the mind. Because what does the heart do? Fundamentally, it works in conjunction with the lungs to pump blood around the body, to deliver oxygen-rich blood to the cells around our body so they can complete their very complex biological functions and pharmacological functions and all those kind of things in order for us to stay alive. But it does it without any input from us. We don't have to remind ourselves to keep our heart beating. We have some control over it. We can manipulate our heart if we suffer from anxiety, huge amounts of that at the moment. There's a brilliant course within the School of Humankind by John Britton to help you combat that. But as part of that, we can manage our heart through breath work. If we extend our exhales, then we start to tap into the parasympathetic system, which is a calming system within our bodies, and we can lower our heart rate. Similarly, if we need to agitate ourselves and get up for a job interview or whatever it might be, we need a bit more energy, we can use our breath to increase our heart rate, build a bit more energy so we can face whatever challenge it is that we have to face. But I want to try an exercise. So once again, I would ask, before we get into the exercise, I just want us to connect back into our bodies. So if you're happy to close your eyes, please do. We're just going to take 2 breaths. So inhale deeply through the nose. Open your mouth and sigh it out. Inhale through the nose. Open your mouth and sigh it out. Now follow my words exactly. Choose to stop your heart. Anyone whose eyes are still closed, feel free to open them now, because obviously we cannot do that. We can't make a choice to stop something that has a fundamental base functionality. We can manipulate it, we can influence it, but we cannot just stop it. Now, there are all sorts of reasons why we need our heart to keep beating, obviously. But the point is the same. Why then do we assume that the mind doesn't have some kind of base, built-in, unstoppable functionality? Because that is my belief that it does. Its job is to throw ideas at us. Its job is to bubble up perspectives and thoughts and ideas. Who knows from where? Our subconscious? Yeah, cool. But the idea that we could empty that, to stop that, I think is a fundamental misinterpretation of meditation. And it's all pervasive in the wellness industry. It's this idea, oh, you just need to calm your mind. You just need to do this, that, and the other. But what if our mind, like our heart, is simply a utility? What if our mind is simply a tool that we can task? Now, if your mind is anything like mine, it can be a massive tool. But the point is, it's still a tool. There is this idea in meditation of being the observer. So if we think of the mind, if the mind is just happily running around telling us all sorts of weird stuff, every now and then we lift off it, we come away from it, and we see the thought. We build our awareness. Our awareness kicks in and we go, oh my God, I just had this thought. I was running yesterday, and at 2 separate occasions, my awareness kicked in and I realized I was counting my footsteps. But I was up in the 65, 66 each time when my awareness kicked in. So we have this tool, utility, that's job, fundamentally is just to chuck stuff in. Do I need to understand why that is? Now, I personally don't. There are some super clever people, professional psychiatrists and all sorts of people who work with the mind, who understand its function way better than I do. I actually highly recommend this book. It's Dr. Steve Peters' The Chimp Paradox. All sorts of really interesting things about the speed of different parts of our brain, and the old brain and the new brain and the ancient brain and the survival mechanisms and all these different things that are happening. Can I understand that? Yeah, I can spend a lot of time researching that, building my understanding. But do I need to? That's a question only you can answer. I don't. I'm happy with the idea that there's the mind, and then there is me, the executive function, that bit of me that is comprised of all, of mind, body, heart, soul. Because the thoughts we have don't see themselves. They're not aware of themselves. We, this weird, ethereal, undefinable I of I am, is the thing that has awareness. So if we can buy into that, if through our lived experience, we have moments where we go, oh yeah, I suddenly became aware that I was thinking about X, Y, or Z. And those two things are separate. Those are different things. The thought is not driving the awareness. The awareness comes in after. And if that is true, then the mind is just a utility. The mind is just a tool. And if that is true, then we can task our mind. I'd like to get into a second very quick exercise that hopefully will illustrate that mind, thought, and the observer. So what I'd like to do, we'll take one very quick, not very quick, very long breath. So if you want to close your eyes, please do. I'd just like us to inhale through the nose. Open the mouth and sigh it out. And keeping your eyes closed this time. I would like for you to consciously clear your mind and then, like a hunter, just bring your awareness to the space that is your mind. Empty at the moment, and I just want you to wait for the next thought. Now, for some people, with lots and lots of practice, the space between waiting and that thought arriving can be relatively long. For those of you in the room live, let me know if any thought has arisen. Okay, I've got one nod. Okay, I've got two nods. Okay, cool. I'm not going to ask you what those thoughts were, but were they, with a show of thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs up if they were consciously intentional thoughts. Thumbs down if they just popped up in there. Okay. Because we've tasked our mind with be aware, just keep your eyes open. We're going to catch this thought when it comes. We don't create the thought. It bubbles up. Now, from our subconscious, from whatever, who knows. But if we can take these experiences, say, well, it wasn't my intention, I didn't create it, it came from somewhere within my mind. It's very similar to a heartbeat. I don't create the heartbeat. I don't tell my heart to beat. It is built-in base functionality. So if we can think of the mind in the same way, then we start developing an ability to distance ourselves from what the mind gives us. Whereas most of us, until we can do that, we buy into it. We get caught up in the mind's ability to give you one thought and then link it to another, and then another, and another, and another. Before we know it, we're in this crazy spiral, pivoting a lot of the time down. There are some wonderful human beings who have this beautiful, positive outlook in life, and their thoughts that they're not creating consciously take them up. That was not me. I will be honest. Mine had a very strong propensity for a downward trajectory. But if we can start to experience this difference, then the thoughts are not I am not my thoughts. They are merely part of a functionality of part of me. And if we can start playing with that over time, we start bringing our awareness to it. We start truly separating ourselves from it, which is all very well and good as a theory. Some of those thoughts are really bad. There's sort of 3 or 4 broad types of thought that I would suffer with. And if you watch my pain and suffering one talk last time, I'm creating the suffering because I'm holding on to it. If you haven't seen it, it's on our YouTube channel. Please go and have a look. There are 4, I think, distinct different types of thought. There is regret about the past. There is worry about the future. There are stories about the present. And then I think the one that generated the most shame for me were those dark, terrible, horrible thoughts that seemingly come out of nowhere. And I say shame because I had one relatively recently. My family is going through, one of our relatives has terminal cancer, and we're dealing with that. And then my mind gave me the idea that my wife had that, and that it was one of those super aggressive cancers, and that it took her life very quickly. Now, at no point is that intentional. At no point is that linked to a desire. It's probably linked to a fear, fine. But that's all coming out of my subconscious. I do not judge myself for the types of thoughts my mind gives me. And there's a reason why I don't. With a show of hands, love a bit of audience participation. By show of hands, were you born on this planet? If you were, lift your hand. By a further show of hands, as best you know, were your parents born on this planet? Okay, I shouldn't have gone that far. Let's just go one level of genealogy. Me too, which means we are all human. Everybody on this planet has those 4 types of thought. Everybody. We don't share them, partly because some of them make us feel shame, and we don't want to share our shame. And part of it is we feel guilt, we feel all sorts of different emotions that make us feel like we are alone, that nobody is going to understand, that we regret the past, we fear the future, we tell ourselves stories about the present. I have a very clear belief about regret. I think regret is an inability to accept the unintended consequences of the decisions we have made. And that sits with another group of what I call blueprint truths. One of them is every decision you have ever made sense to you at some level when you made it. Every single decision. Every decision you make has 2 types of consequence. There's the intended and there's unintended. But we forget what the intended was. We can be dealing with the consequences of decisions we made decades ago. In the book, I tell a story about when I stopped being fun and silly. I was 11 years old. I was in a geography class and I was pulling faces at myself in a glass cabinet, and my teacher got me to stand on the chair in front of all the other kids and show them what I was doing. I didn't, because I was deeply embarrassed. So he did. And 32 11-year-olds burst hysterically into laughter, and I felt deeply humiliated. So from that point on, I stopped being silly, except in very, very rare areas and times when I felt super safe. And then somebody said to me just a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, "You're really earnest." And I suddenly thought, I don't want to be earnest. I want to be silly. But I had stopped being silly at the age of 11, and that automated behavior followed me, shaping how I approached situations for 30 years. Now, the decision to stop being silly at 11 made absolute sense. I don't know what the teaching moment was for this geography teacher, but in order for me to feel safe and included, I stopped risking being humiliated. But it was only when I hit my 40s that I remembered that moment. So regret for me, I don't regret that decision because it was the only decision that 11-year-old version of me could have. It achieved the intended consequences. It kept me safe. The unintended consequences, well, they plagued me for 30 years because without even thinking about it, I avoided situations where I feared I could be humiliated. So regret is an inability to accept the unintended consequences. As soon as we can just accept what has been, and that it made sense, the decision we made sense, and it doesn't matter what we're dealing with now, we can strip the stories away and we can deal with it. So the regret comes to the present where we tell ourselves stories about what a useless piece of whatever I am, and far worse language than that looking in the mirror. I know it happens. I lived it for such a long time. But once we can just accept all those decisions made sense, even if we can't remember why, Then we can strip the stories away and deal with what we are dealing in the moment, which helps us alleviate those future worries because we recognize, I don't know what's going to happen. There is no future, there is only now. And my life moves through the now into new nows. But if I allow these stories, if I allow the fundamental base function of my mind, which is to give me stories, to give me thoughts, I'm the executive function, not my mind. I'm the one who can sit there and go, I am aware this is just a thought. Does this thought serve me? Does this thought serve me? Yeah, thought I'd mixed up my letters. Because if it doesn't, I get to choose. With practice, with awareness, I get to interrupt the automatic nature of my thoughts. I get to interrupt the flow, the roller coaster, the spiral, but only if I bring my awareness. So I have a friend, I have lots of friends, but one of my friends I was talking to the other day said he's also a coach, and he was saying there was a moment of like an epiphany for him. The moment he realized his task was not to stop the first thought, because you can't. It's going to come. It's what the mind does. It's its job, just like the heart beats, just like the lungs inflate. The mind gives us things to think about. His task is not to stop that first thought. What he practices is his awareness when it comes in, and he assesses whether it's of value or not. And if it isn't, he does not allow the second. His job is to interrupt the process of thought to thought and redirect his mind. Because if we view the mind, like I said earlier, as a utility, simply as a tool at our disposal, the executive function, this greater I, then why shouldn't we task it? And when we do task it, there would have been a moment in your exercise where we were waiting for the thought, where there was no thought. Now, how long that was, that's down to the individual. And with practice, we can stretch that moment, but we can't maintain it in perpetuity. It's going to come in. So it's when it comes in, can we catch it? How do we do that? Well, it just so happens I have a 246 framework that is applicable to all areas of our lives. It's in the book. But I want to talk about the 6 essential elements, because genuinely working with these, embodying these, practicing these on a daily basis, recognizing I'm going to fail, recognizing there'll be days when my thoughts just run away from me and I cannot wrangle them back, recognizing that that moment in my life will pass and my mind will calm again. Using these 6 essential elements fundamentally can transform any moment. First one is compassion, no self-judgment. This is all internal to begin with. We do not judge ourselves because we're human. And that isn't some waffly, yeah, you're only human. Although that is true. It's as a human being, my mind has base functionality. I don't get to control it. I can manipulate it, I can manage it, I can work with it, but I do not get to choose every thought that comes into my head. And all of that kind of protection mechanism stuff that keeps us afraid and small, that's going to come, because that is part of our fundamental deep blueprint wiring. So compassion is I never judge my thoughts, even the really horrible ones, the ones that previously would have brought shame to me. Didn't choose it. It's not mine. It's fine. It says nothing about me. Curiosity. One of the big ones is we often have repeating thoughts. And if they're really horrible, then let's interrupt them and move away from them and do something else. But there is something to be said for, why do people repeat themselves? Fundamentally, it's because they don't feel heard. So for some of our thoughts, if they are repetitive, curiosity is a brilliant tool. Curiosity combined with compassion, no judgment. Okay, what are you trying to tell me? What can I learn from this thought that does not define me? It does not tell me that I am a terrible person. It is information, and it is almost certainly information from a much younger version of you. Compassion, curiosity, connection. Can we seek that younger version of, when I had that memory of my geography class come up, I burst into tears. Because 30 years of my life had been influenced by a terrified, humiliated 11-year-old who hadn't done anything wrong. It wasn't my fault. My geography teacher taught a very boring class, and me pulling faces was much more entertaining. I hadn't done anything wrong. Reconnection with who we really are, recognizing that, forgiving that 11-year-old, even though he didn't need forgiving, like holding him. I haven't done lots of guided inner child work, but man, I spend a lot of time with my younger selves. And they're all relatively grateful. They don't think I'm that much of a dick. It's great. Compassion, curiosity, connection. Then we get into the really, really tangible ones. Awareness. As our thoughts come up, see them for what they are. It's just our mind giving us stuff to consider. You do not have to defer to your mind. You are the executive function. You get to say, this is a terrible thought. I'm not interested in where this goes. And a technique we can use at this point is taking away what you don't want doesn't give you what you do want. It creates a space, and something will come into that space. And as we've already figured out, our mind is going to fill it eventually. Sooner or later, our mind will give us another thought, unless our intentional, functional, executive part of us says, I do not care about that. I do not want to think about that. What I do want to think about is this. Set your mind a task. It will jump off the rails. Of course it will. But with practice, we can train our minds to pursue the things we ask it to pursue. So that's awareness. Acceptance. Fighting our thoughts, refusing them, denying they're there. It's an act of futility. Can we accept that they're just thoughts? It's just, I'm sure you could, if you're interested, you could break it down to, it's just chemical reaction. It's just electricity. It's nothing. There is nothing tangible in them. They don't create something you can touch. How we feel about them creates the world around us. Whether we buy into them creates the world around us. They themselves are just nothing. If we can accept that, we can start to challenge them. Go on, I don't like, well, I do not like this. I'm not having it. We are interrupting this particular flow. This particular roller coaster is not going to get going. And that for me is what meditation is. It's observing the thought. It's bringing our awareness to the fact that our mind is always going to be active, but letting it go, not allowing that second thought, that third thought, that fourth thought, me counting my footsteps, the number 68, stopping it at 67 when my awareness kicks in, because there was no issue with it, but it wasn't something I'd chosen. It was like, oh, it's quite interesting. I'm going to interrupt this and think about that tree. Tasking our minds with something else. And then the final one, intentional action. It's tasking our minds. We get to be the director. We don't have to let the players run amok across the stage. We actually get to create a play we want to see. I just made that metaphor up, by the way. Quite pleased with that. It's a shame John's not here. He would definitely appreciate it. So fundamentally, that's it. That's the perspectives. You are not your thoughts. Clearly not. I hope. Clearly not. And if you're still unsure, well, let's go back through that exercise. Go back through, I'm not going to ask you to try and stop your heart again. That seems fairly futile. But if we think about the mind in a similar way, you get to decide how you view these things. If we think about the mind in a similar way we can think of the heart, it's a utility, it's a tool. It is a fundamental part of us, but it is not the consciousness in control. It works for us, not the other way around. And go gently. Treat yourself with deep compassion. Our minds have had, I was about to say how old I am again, but I do that every blooming one of these. I've had many decades of my mind racing. So when I first started interrupting the thought, it was really difficult. I couldn't do it for very long. It's like anything. It had decades of practice. The rails inside my mind were super, super shiny, super slick. It was very difficult to bounce it off those tracks into a different way of thinking. But it is absolutely possible. And all we need is to do it a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. And eventually, it's the law of compound returns. Making stuff up now. But it compounds over time. And so when those terrible thoughts do come back, and they will, of course they will, base function of the mind, we're okay. We've done the compassion, the curiosity, the connection, the awareness, the acceptance. We practice the intentional action. I'm not going to give you a long list of other practices you can do. However, I do 100% recommend getting your thoughts out of your head. In the confines of your head, that's kind of their environment. They've stacked the deck, and decades of them running amok has created an environment perfect for them. I think Brené Brown says shame does not survive the light. So get your thoughts out of your head. Journal, write them down, whatever it might be. Repetitive thoughts in the night. They don't have to be negative. They could just be things that are constantly bickering away in your mind. If that's the case, write them down. I can almost guarantee that 99% of them in the morning, what felt like a groundbreaking, earth-shattering idea at 2 a.m, you can't understand when you wake up the next day. But it is better to get them out of your head. And if they are of what we would consider a more negative slant, find somebody to talk to about them. Because I promise you, whether they are willing to share in the first instance or not, they're having a similar experience. The thought might be different, frequency might be different, but no human goes through life not having these random thoughts that if we attach meaning to them, they take us to places we don't really want to go. Final word, like He-Man, you have the power. I should definitely stop ad-libbing. I should write this more often. But that is it. Thank you very much. Slightly shorter one from me. Goodness, can't imagine why that is. Thank you very much for listening. This is going to be on YouTube, so feel free to revisit that. Please visit the website, www.schoolofhumankind.com. There are 2 free events every week. I'm doing a meditation at the end of this month. I can't remember whether it's a Tuesday or a Thursday. That is the final one of those of the month. Then I'm doing a meditation there. There are lots and lots of other things. We've got some really amazing stuff coming up next month. I know Angela is doing something about the superpower of emotions, or that's not the title, but she's talking about emotions. Sorrel, Pinder and I are doing a conversation around the difficulty of relationships. There's so much going on. Check the YouTube channel out, School of Humankind. All of the events we've done today are there. So please have a look. Let us know what you think. John's anxiety course is on the website, so go and have a look, check it out. There are more courses coming. And I think that's it. I wish you a peaceful and joyful few days until whoever next comes to talk. And I will speak to you soon.